And welcome to yet another action-packed, exciting hour of the Smoky Mountain Wrestling Rewatch Along Project. This is podcasting the way it used to be and the way you like it. This show is a production of the Something Else Podcasting Network, and it is episode number 089 of Smoky Mountain Wrestling from October 9th, 1993, taped October 4th, 1993, at the Jellicoe High School in Jellicoe, Virginia. My name is Arya, and joining me, as always, is the Margie to my Tammy Fytch. It's Trae. Trae, how the hell are you today?
Okay, two corrections. Number one, Jellicoe was in Tennessee, and number two, we discussed this a little bit. I'm pretty sure. I don't know why. I don't know why every source on the internet has this show being taped at the next taping in Jellicoe. I am certain that this show was taped on September 13th in Oakwood, Virginia. I even like
That's what I said
I've
that to
paused.
you.
Well, yeah, and I went and looked because you said it to me, and I compared like to see if I could see the same color shirts in the when you look at the crowd like at the front of the ring, and it's the same people,
Yeah.
and it's Dutch is wearing the same stuff, and Les is still there. It's got to be, and I don't understand why on like cage match and stuff they have it wrong, and it's like
And, the,
it's not like
and
it
it,
wasn't those
yeah.
taping. Neither of those tapings were reported in the Observer for whatever reason, like full results, and yeah, I don't know.
And part of the problem is for whatever reason, they don't list the city. Like usually, when they do the intro, they come up to the crowd, they say Smoky Mountain Wrestling on the screen. Then underneath it in white type is the where they are in the town that they're in. But for whatever reason, they don't do that on this episode. And actually, I was like so obsessed in trying to find out, I skipped ahead a couple of weeks just to look, and I'm like, I guess it's possible because like Dutch isn't wearing the vest and whatnot, on the next show, but like he's wearing the rest of it. So I'm like, it's possible, but it doesn't make sense for it to be you know, like why would they bring in Les just for the first episode, and bring back Bob for the rest of them? But
Yeah, it doesn't
I
make any
I could
sense.
honestly, like I was looking for other signs and I didn't even think to look at the crowd. That would have been too fucking easy, I guess. Um, but anyway, so like, it's funny because it makes sense because typically, like when they do a big gimmick match, like this week they're doing a coal miner's glove match in the main event. Typically, that's last match of the last taping kind of
Yeah,
thing, not last match of the first taping. Although, like with this, you're looking at it like this is now the first time they're doing four official shows in one location, whether it's four at the last place or four in Jellicoe. Either way, it's the first time they're doing four full shows because before I forget if this was before you came on or not. They did three full shows and like half of a show at one point.
yeah,
So like they got
I was here for that.
yeah, okay, yeah, they got seven episodes out of two tapings. And it was like half and half kind of thing. But yeah, yeah, this show, I watched this right after the TNA show I talked about yesterday with Cindy. I wrote, this is a fucking palate cleanser. This could be a 50-minute Tim Horner promo, and it wouldn't be as bad as fucking Russo booking TNA.
I don't know. I don't know how you do that. I guess it's just like watch it just to laugh at it. You know what we should do? We shouldn't do this because it would be terrible for our health. One of these days, when we've watched like all the territories and stuff, we should do
Hmm.
just 2000 WCW.
Oh, Lord, you hate me that much, don't you? Cindy wanted to do that too, I think. It's like, good Lord, you two do a damn podcast. Um, but what's what? By the way, have you figured out what we want to watch next Tuesday?
Oh, I think I had an idea and it slipped out of my brain. Let me think. Hmm.
Okay. Well, Trey tries to remember what he was thinking. Let's go to the intro of the show with Les Thatcher and Dutch Mantel.
Welcome to another exciting hour of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Pro wrestling the way it used to be, the way you like it. I'm Les Thatcher along with Dutch Mantel. We'll be calling the action. That part of that action is going to be the Rock and Roll Express. Plus, the debut of Tammy's Tips.
Wait a minute, I got something to say about this premiere of Tammy's Tips. It took the place of Down and Dirty with Dutch, and I knew when they impeached Cornette, some bad things like that might happen to me. I don't like it at all.
Well, she bought the time, Dutch, one way or the other, but also we have a coal miners match, and that's going to be Brian Lee against Tracy Smothers, and of course, beat the champ. You want to draw for that now, Dutch?
My special deal here every week, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, to draw a name out of the hat to face the Dirty White Boy, and that man will be this week a young man by the name of Chris Kanyon will try his luck against the Dirty White Boy. Stay tuned, an exciting hour.
We've got a great one coming up for you right now. Let's go to the ring for the introductions.
Okay, so I know Dark Secret is a heel jobber, and it's funny because like the jobbers don't really have babyface or heel distinction, but like Dark Secret is definitely a heel jobber. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's why you're not supposed to care that he got fucked last week. But in the annals of people getting fucked in title matches, he really got fucked because he was having his match and two people got in the ring, wrestled each other, did not touch anybody in the ring, and the match was thrown out and he lost his shot at the title.
Yeah, but he did that clown shit with Candido and Cornette the week before, so fuck him, right?
There you go. Shouldn't that disqualify him from ever being allowed to be a wrestler or any or some shit like that?
I think it should. By the way, when if you need a TV title challenger, who better than Kanyon?
There you go.
So
Also,
I have a question. I have a question. Okay. So Tammy's Tips is replacing Down and Dirty with Dutch because she bought the time.
yes.
So did she outbid him or was Dutch just getting a freebie?
I think because I don't believe they ever mentioned Dutch paying for the time. I think that he was getting a freebie, and Smoky Mountain, especially the Board of Commissioners nowadays, that we don't have a commissioner. They're, it's like WWE these days. They're doing it for the money, and if somebody offers you $500 for a 3-minute time slot where you normally get nothing, you're going to take that $500.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you got to pay those bills.
Yep. And I that is a tremendous segment. I can't wait to talk to you about it. It's obviously a blatant, Andy Kaufman ripoff, but when it comes to blatant Andy Kaufman ripoffs, it's pretty fun, I think.
I love
Um,
that segment so much. I can't wait. I actually just I was telling my wife about it just right before we started recording, just because it was hilarious.
yes. Um, and of course, we're going to see Primetime Brian Lee versus Tracy in the Coal Miner's Glove match. And during this entire thing, I'm debating with myself where this show is taking place because I wrote basically what you said. ProWrestlingHistory.com and Cage Match list the shows being taped in Jellicoe, but the look of it made me think it was in the same place as last week. But, oh well.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I can't say it necessarily matters. It's just, we like to be accurate on this goddamn show.
Yes, we do.
And
We are sticklers for historical accuracy.
yes, we are. Now, just a heads up, I do have a cold, and while I am trying to hit the mute button, as anytime a cough comes up, if I accidentally cough in your ears, I apologize in advance, and Trae may have to pick up some of the slack this week when I'm hacking up a lung.
Yeah, we'll take
But
up the slack for me for just a minute because I just spilled my soda on my desk. I have to run and grab a towel.
oh, great, this could be a disaster waiting to happen. So while Trey's going to pick up a towel, let's see here. What can we talk about? So before we taped the show, I was in a super secret game night as part of AEW Heels with Aubrey and a few of the other heels. If you've ever watched an AEW show or been to an AEW show and seen some random ass signs that like a handful of people are marking out for, it's typically from Heels game nights. If you've ever seen a sign that talks about Stay Mustard or Will Ospreay doing the dishes, that's where that comes from. So in case you're ever out there, you see some of these weird ass signs, you're like, what the hell is that? Or is that person talking about? they may have been talking about an AEW Heels game night. Go to AEWHeels.com, or AllEliteHeels.com is the actual thing. Sign up today. It's $50 for 1 year. You get to have monthly Zoom calls with Aubrey Edwards, with Amanda Huber, and many, many others. And then before every pay-per-view, there's a meet and greet where you get to hang out with Aubrey and Amanda, and sometimes there's extra guests too. I've met so many AEW wrestlers through Heels, it's not even funny. You get to discover things like, yes, Willow really is the nicest human being on the planet, or she's a great actress, or maybe
Oh,
both.
I'm
Who
glad.
knows?
Glad to hear that.
Hey, you're back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like seriously, I would have been so upset if I found out Willow was a jerk, just
Yeah.
because, like,
Uh, She just I don't think you could fake that.
yeah.
It's too she's too authentic. Look, when you most wrestlers, most wrestlers that I've ever heard ask this question would say, like, would you rather be a babyface or a heel? Everybody says heel. And that's because it's easier to make people hate you than it is to make them like you. And that is why when you have somebody who is such a natural babyface like Willow, at a natural babyface like that is just worth their weight in gold.
And you know Vince Russo would turn her heel in week one.
Oh, absolutely, idiot.
Yes. Um, oh my God, what was I going to say? Obviously something very important, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, tag team champions Rock and Roll Express versus the Dark Secret and Robbie Eagle. Three of the four people in this match are heels on 2003 TNA. And then the Rock and Roll win with the double drop kick on the Dark Secret. Yeah, in case you didn't listen to yesterday's show, a few weeks ago, Trae and I were talking about the Rock and Roll Express and how only a complete fucking dumbass would turn them heel. Well, listen to the TNA show yesterday where we talk about how a complete fucking dumbass turned them heel.
Weren't they also heels in the WWF in '98?
The same fucking dumbass did that too.
Yeah.
But this was the same TNA show that turned Tony Schiavone heel. You know,
Wow.
it, yeah,
Just
it's that. And I just talked to Stevie J about it because I sent him that show before we started taping, and he's like, "Wow, this," because the name of the show is "Who Cares," and Steve was like, "Man, this seems a little sad for an episode title." I'm like, "Well, there's a reason for it because in this famous angle with Tony Schiavone turning heel and Mike Tenay and Vince Russo and Percy Pringle." In the middle of the screen, some fan holds up a sign that says "Who cares?" And that guy became the biggest baby face in the world to me.
the
Also, some
so the
Mhm.
show that was so bad that Tony Schiavone just stayed away from the business for 15 years.
Yes, that's actually part of it. They wanted Schiavone to be a regular character, and he hated being a heel so much that he refused to go back. Um, there was also another sign during this that said the nonstop action has stopped, which it was one of those shows that you're like, if you paid $10 for this, because it's important to remember, this did not air on Spike TV. This was a 2 hour pay-per-view that you paid $10 to watch. The show had no good matches. Like the best match was like a 2-star match using the Dave Meltzer star scale. Like that was the best match on the show was 2 stars. And like the show was at least 50% talking, at least 50% talking. If you paid $10 to watch that show, why the fuck would you pay $10 to watch the next week's show?
Because
Like,
you're a super nerd who watches every week. No other reason.
uh, honestly, like I to hear all that ranting, we went about 90 minutes yesterday, which I know doesn't sound like much with Trae and I, who go nearly 2 hours every time we open our mouths. But Cindy and I usually go about 45, 50 minutes, and we went 90 yesterday. So take that for what it's worth. Any
Wow.
thoughts on the Rock and Roll Express versus the Dark Secret and Robbie Eagle?
Uh, is that Les was talking about how many times the Rock and Roll Express have been tag team champions, and Dutch just goes, "Well, that just means they lost them a bunch of times," and I popped for that.
Somebody said that about Rick to Ric Flair one. I think actually Bradshaw said that the Triple H when they had their confrontation one time backstage, and Triple H is like, "Yeah, I'm a fucking 13-time champion, Mister One Time," and he's like, "Yeah, and I haven't lost the belt at all."
Yeah,
And
I
I was like,
the one that I remember it was like I think it was like 2001 that Booker T was talking about being a five-time WCW champion, and Rob Van Dam goes, "Wow, I can't believe you lost the WCW title five times."
I don't remember that, but
I think it was
I
during
do
the
remember.
invasion.
Yeah, that sounds right. I do remember Rob Van Dam when he was shooting a Triple H when Triple H buried him that time. His big comment was that Triple H really can spit water. That
Yes,
was kind of funny.
I'm still mad about that. 20
About
twenty three years later.
about Hunter spitting water or Hunter burying Rob Van Dam.
Hunter burying Rob Van Dam. Rob Van Dam was so fucking cool. Like, look,
Yeah.
if you weren't there from like 1999 to 2001, you don't understand that when we were like 13, 15-year-old kids, Rob Van Dam
Mhm.
was the coolest motherfucker around. They
Like let's be honest. He was not the smoothest wrestler in the world. He really wasn't. There was a lot of holes in his game, and like people like Jerry Lynn made him look a whole lot better than he may have really been at times. However, in a lot of ways, and there may be people who throw bricks at me for saying this, he's a lot like the Young Bucks are nowadays. Well, like the Young Bucks were like 3, 4, 5 years ago, where he did a lot of cool shit. And a lot of people liked him because he did a lot of cool shit.
Yeah, well, the Young Bucks are so smooth. He so there was some really stupid discourse on Twitter this week. I know, who would have thunk it, that
I'm
like
shocked.
people were showing like Manami Toyota clips and saying she wasn't good because like her shit looks kind of, erratic and out of control. And I'm like, that's when it's fucking like wrestling's not supposed to be okay, look, everybody always says it ain't ballet. And that's so fucking stupid because ballerinas are like some of the toughest people. They go through so much shit to do that shit. Like
Hmm.
I couldn't imagine being a fucking ballerina. So like
Hmm.
I cringe when people say, "Well, it ain't ballet." But in this context, when somebody's saying, "Well, everything's got to be perfect form to be good pro wrestling," that is the one time that I think it's appropriate to say that it ain't ballet. It's like wrestling is better when it looks like it's not too perfect. It it needs to look a little out of control sometimes. That's why.
Yes.
Okay, on the Oh My Godcast this week, we covered the ECW debut of Sabu. Sabu was not a good wrestler, especially in 1993. But it works because he was something that nobody had ever seen before, and he was doing shit that nobody else was doing. And there's still shit that Rob Van Dam was doing that like just blows my mind. But the one, my favorite RVD spot forever and ever is that when he would put the guy across the guardrail and then go to the apron and do the RVD and then do a spinning leg drop to the guardrail. I love that
Yes.
spot so much. Oh, so
Yes.
cool. Yeah, the one person who I've seen who kind of reminds me of Rob Van Dam in terms of work is Alex Zane. Have you ever seen Alex Zane?
I have. Actually, I thought you were going to say Kid Cash. Because at least
Oh,
ECW and TNA Kid Cash was very
I
similar.
always thought Kid Cash
Um,
was kind of a traditionally better worker than that. I don't know.
there was a spot on the TNA show. They did a mixed tag match, which just is this really tells you the Vince Russo-iness of the show. You had Kid Cash and Sonny Siaki on opposite teams, and when they wrestled each other, it was the best match on the show. And their partners were Trinity and Desire, who was the worst match on the show. And it ended up averaging out as the second best match on the show. But anyway, there was a spot where Sonny Siaki was sitting on the mat next to the ropes, and Kid Cash basically did the Van Terminator, only without a chair or anything in the way. But he did a front flip into the drop kick in the corner, but he came up a little short because he basically did the Van Terminator to Sonny Siaki's nuts. And
That's not good.
basically that was that I can't say that was the end of the match because the girls were gonna have to get in at some point, but that was the end of the match because the girls got in and that's where the match went to hell. Um,
Yeah. How did we get
But
here
anyway,
from the Rock and Roll Express and the fucking Dark Secret?
we talked about Rob Van Dam. Oh yeah, I didn't even bother telling the rest of my Rob Van Dam story. So I heard because in 2002 I wanted Van Dam to win the world title from Triple H, and they did a pay-per-view match after
Hmm.
Triple H got handed the WCW title. They did a pay-per-view match between him and Van Dam, and that's when Van Dam was their Continental Champion, and they booked him to lose it right before the pay-per-view, and that was usually the sign of he's going to win the belt. And then he didn't win the belt. And I remember like that was the first time, at least in my head, that this is the Triple H reign of terror. I hate this man, and not just in a he's a heel way. But I heard an interview years later with one of the writers at the time, and they made, as much as I hated to admit it, they made a perfectly logical defense of that, in that it wasn't so much Triple H needed to be put over. The title belt itself needed to be put over, and since it was a brand new belt, it needed it needed an actual top guy, not somebody that Vince was going to waver on with the belt. Like, you know what I
The
mean?
Yeah, and that's
So
that's okay. The problem is that then Rob Van Dam, who should by all means have been a huge fucking star, proceeded to not sniff the main event again for 3 years.
yes, and then he sniffs some marijuana, and well, yeah. Um, And then the other one, we talked about this, we messaged each other, talking about Sabu. Sabu had a WWF tryout match in 1993, like weeks after his debut in ECW, and he took on Scott Taylor, the future Scotty Too Hottie. And I read about it in the Observer while I was looking at, this week's results to put in the thing here. And Dave said that Sabu looked bad. And I'm like, well, let me see if I can find the match, because there's a lot of dark matches out there on the internet, and this one was out there. It was on YouTube, and oh my God, Sabu looked really fucking bad here, and I'm not surprised one bit that he did not get a job. Because at first I was like, okay, it's Sabu in 1993. It's like he is not cut out for the WWF with like that style
No.
and whatnot. But it wasn't
Mm-mm.
just his style was bad; it was that he was bad that night. And I wouldn't
Yeah.
like. I don't think anybody would, blame Vince for hiring him. I mean, you look at the roster and you go, okay, how can you have these people on and not Sabu? But like looking at it just purely from a how good or bad is this guy, the guy was pretty fucking bad that day.
Yeah. Now, yeah, he actually worked three dark matches on like 3 days in a row, and so
Hmm.
that was the first one. The first he wrestled Scott Taylor on, I guess, the Monday. Yeah, because there was a live Raw, so that was Monday. Tuesday he wrestled Owen Hart, and that's the match I wish was online.
Okay, I
Eh,
did not know that.
yeah. And then Wednesday he wrestled Scott Taylor again. And according to the
Uh,
Observer, the other two matches were better. It's we the only one seems to be the only one available is the worst one. But yeah,
and for those who care, that was the same episode of Raw where Crush turned heel on Macho Man Randy Savage.
yeah, I think
Spoiler,
that's
that's
a
coming up in your October watching.
yeah. I think it's next. Maybe it's next or like two later.
All right. So now that we've gone way off track here, 30 minutes into the show, let's talk about the first promo of the show, 5 minutes in. Les Thatcher is with Daryl Van Horn, who I recall is Father James Mitchell. Let's go to that right now.
Daryl Van Horn. And Daryl, last week's program, I asked you to tell me about why you'd come here. You told me all about Daryl Van Horn. How about this wrestler that you're going to manage?
Well, as I told you, Mr. Thatcher, I have returned from the University of Cairo, where I became an ordained Bishop of Bacchanalia. Now, I don't want to let too much out about this new find of mine, but I will tell you this, Mr. Thatcher. This man stands nearly 7 feet tall and weighs 350 pounds. There's nothing like him in the world, and certainly nothing like him here in the Smoky Mountain area that can compare.
Well, have I seen him wrestle? Have any of the fans, has anyone here seen him wrestle before?
No, you've never seen this man wrestle because he has never stepped foot in a professional wrestling ring in his life.
Never wrestled before?
No, shut up. He has never wrestled, but he doesn't have to. This man has bathed in the blood of the Nile. He has consorted with queens. He has sipped wine made from the tears of 1,000 virgins. He has transcended everything that you hillbillies have come to think of a wrestler as. Shut up, crackers. You're going to see in just a few weeks, like I said, as soon as I get the paperwork through.
How about a name?
It's none of your business yet, Thatcher. Curiosity killed the cat. Just watch. In a few weeks, as I said, he will change the history of professional wrestling, and I will assume my rightful place in the throne as the preeminent wrestling manager in the history of the business, and me and my new find will take all of the money, all of the titles, and all of the Jezebels there are to have.
Comments of Daryl Van Horn, and I prefer videotape or documentation of some sort. We'll be back right after this.
Jezebel? Jezebel? I can never hear that word and not think of Paul Heyman being aghast that JR would call Stephanie McMahon a Jezebel.
Oh, JR loved that word, didn't he?
Yes, he did. So Daryl Van Horn still has his Fez this week, which is just a tremendous manager accoutrement.
Yes.
And Daryl says that he's an ordained bishop of Bacchanalia. And I don't know about you, but I then had to go out and find out what the hell Bacchanalia was. And I don't know if I got the right Bacchanalia or not, because the one that I found, according to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, Bacchanalia is a Roman festival of Bacchus celebrated with dancing, song, and revelry. I think I have the wrong Bacchanalia.
I mean, he did say he was studying necrophilia, so who the fuck knows?
Daryl says his new guy is almost 7 feet tall, and you can't teach that. He said this man has never wrestled before, but has bathed in blood, sipped wine made from the tears of 1,000 virgins, and then he called the fans crackers. And I'm like, I thought New Jack was still a year away.
Yeah, well, yeah, that. I just always thought that was so silly. Crackers as an insult. Like, does anybody get offended at being called a cracker? Like,
I don't know. It's 1993. I imagine someone might. Plus, New Jack can come up with much more creative words to describe white people than crackers.
oh yeah, well, can't wait for that.
Can't wait to see what almost got the company kicked off of different TV stations.
Yeah, just go wait, might make white people mad.
Yes. I just always loved when he shouts out to OJ saying two down or something.
Two more down or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny to talk about people being murdered. Well, it's weirdly been a while since I've gotten to do this.
I
I
know.
don't remember I don't
I'm
know the
excited
last time
for
we
you.
wrestled on TV, but and I'm doing it now with a cold, so I'm going to get fucked here in the middle here, but thunder rolls and the lightning strike. Tim Horner, in what feels like his first match in a year on TV against Jason West. And of course, the funny thing is, like, the one thing Tim Horner is good at is wrestling, and the one thing he's bad at is promos. And we've had to listen to a lot of Tim Horner lately and not watch a lot of Tim Horner.
Yeah, I'd rather watch him wrestle, honestly. So these matches were largely pretty boring this week, so I spent most of my time listening to Les and Dutch. And so during this match, they were debating what constitutes a scientific wrestling match, because we're building to the Rock and Roll Express and Armstrong's the babyface tag title match at the Parade of Champions, and Dutch is saying, well, it's not going to be a clean match. There's going to be fists and elbows thrown. And Les is like, well, there might be, but it'll still be a clean match. So then they start debating what constitutes a scientific wrestling match. And Les says it just means that you win with a wrestling hold. And I don't think that that's what that means.
maybe not a scientific match, but a clean match. I mean, you know, I would say as long as you don't cheat and break the rules to beat your opponent, then that counts. Like if your style is to punch and kick, I mean, that's fine as long as you're punching and kicking within the rules of the wrestling ring. It's when you start cheating, that's when it's not a clean match. Um, by the way, I noted here Horner tried to throw his foam lightning bolt at the crowd and missed. It didn't even clear the ring. It landed on the apron.
It's hard to throw foam.
You know what else is apparently hard? Taking a front bump off a drop toe hold. Horner does a drop toe hold, and Jason West somehow took a back bump. Um, Horner, like, I don't know, for some reason, I guess this is the week he got pissed off about all the other baby faces doing all the hot moves because this is the week that he decided to break out some new moves. Because in it, he breaks out a pump handle crotch slam at one point. Like, okay, when the hell have you ever done that, Tim? And then he did the natural bridge so fast that he got ribbed about how fucking slow the natural bridge was. And I was worried that the show was on fast forward, but it wasn't. He just did the natural bridge at a pace that, I don't know, a normal wrestler would do it in this situation
Yeah,
and picked up the win.
the unnatural bridge, unnaturally fast by our standards.
But by the way, this is episode 89. Since episode 80, he's only wrestled one match on TV. So,
Well,
that
the good
tells you
times
everything
can't
you need
last
to know.
forever.
Nope. All right, let's go to a promo with a brand new wrestler, kind of, in Smoky Mountain. It's the Bullets.
That watched TV last week and watched Smoky Mountain Wrestling knows why the Bullet is on the scene. Now, Jim Cornette drugged my good friend Bob Armstrong through the mud, give him a raw deal, brought in secret weapons, Terry Funk, messed him around real good. Well, I ain't going to stand for it. You see, I'm a personal friend of Bob Armstrong's, and I'm going to do everything I can, Jimmy Cornette, no matter what you say, no matter how much money your mama's got, you ain't going to be able to buy me. You ain't going to buy a thing that I got. But what I will do, and I promise all the wrestling fans this, is before I'm finished, I'm going to restore Bob Armstrong to his rightful position as commissioner of Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
Well, we've heard from the Bullet, and now we're going to hear from Jim Cornette.
If anybody in the world thinks that no good stinking Bob Armstrong is fooling anybody, he's out of his mind. And let me just say this. I am sick and tired of being abused like this from all these rednecks and all these people at Smoky Mountain Wrestling and everybody who thinks they're going to get one up on Jim Cornette. Killer Kyle has got the number of one Bullet Bob Armstrong, and all we got to do is prove it, and then he'll be out of here for good. So let me just say this. That sock is coming off, and it's coming off quick, and Killer Kyle is going to be the man to do it. 6'2", 300 pounds, strong as a bull, mean as an ox, and there's no way that Bullet Bob Armstrong or anybody else can stand up to him. Killer Kyle's going to be the one to do the job, and I'll have him out of my hair once and for all.
The comments of Jim Cornette. Will be back with more Smoky Mountain action right after this.
All right, so that's a little confusing by Jim Cornette. Why does he want the Bullet socks so much? Or I mean, they just look like plain white socks anytime we see the Bullet. And then he says he brought in Killer Kyle to do the job. I mean, I guess technically, if you were to look at it logically, yes, he brought in Killer Kyle to do the job because, the rest of the heels had other stuff to do at this point. But I mean, why would you say that on TV? Why wouldn't he brought Killer Kyle in to go over?
He wants the sock that he wears on his face.
Oh, that makes so much more sense. I note that at least a Bullet Bob took the time to lace up his mask this week. Um,
Well,
but
he had
I
time
just,
this week.
I just love that, in a way, it's like Stagger Lee in Mid South. It's like they're not even trying to pretend that it's anybody other than Bullet Bob Armstrong. Like at least
No, no.
in Mid South, the first time we saw the Stagger Lee thing last year, I forget if you were here or not, but like they would have, I forget the jobber's name, but there was an African American jobber they had. It was a decent sized guy that they would do two shots with Junkyard Dog and Stagger Lee both in at the same time. So I'd be like, oh, look, it's not Junkyard Dog. They're standing here at the same time. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd like to see something like that happen here.
Yeah, I was just thinking because you can look at that mask and see that it's Bob Armstrong's face. So who do they put under it? Who do they put under it
Yes.
to, I don't know.
So it's apparently not as easy as finding the nearest African American wrestler and telling him to wear a mask.
Yeah, well, anybody can do that.
Yes. Would that be more or less funny if, like, next week on Smoky Mountain, the Bullet was here and it was like a random African American wrestler under the mask? It's like, oh, it's Coco Beware.
Should get George Weingroff, and he'd have to wear the mask on his dick though.
Yeah, that would be too obvious. What Weingroff was here on Smoky Mountain once, right? He was like a Middle
Yeah, he
Eastern
was.
heel or something.
Yeah, what that gimmick that he was doing in Memphis at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. At least it's not the Stormtrooper with the
By the
big
way,
swastika.
you and I have talked about this, but I don't think I talked about it on the show. So I've been in my 1993 keeping up with where we are, and so
Yes.
I just watched the first Pancrease event, and
Nice.
boy was there. This was it's really interesting because it's like these were obviously like actual shoots, like for the first
Mhm.
time, and it's
Yeah.
these match like the longest match was hair over 6 minutes, and but one of the matches, Yoshiki Takahashi defeated George Weingroff in 1 minute and 23 seconds by knockout with palm strikes.
Oh, that's almost as bad as that Mirko Crocop Alberto Del Rio fight.
Yeah. Now we know he only lost because his dick was jet lagged.
There you go. Do you remember, like, now that I've fucking brought up Del Rio, do you remember when they had Del Rio versus Tito Ortiz in a MMA fight?
And he wore the. Was that the one he wore the mask?
No, that was the Mirko Crocop
Oh
fight
yeah,
where
yeah.
Mirko knocked his head off. But this was like a couple years ago. They uh the stakes were Alberto's fake WWE title belt or Tito Ortiz, I think he had a fake UFC title belt. And the
Oh
winner
wow.
got the opposing person's belt.
Huh.
And it was just as you imagine it is.
So how many pro
Um,
wrestlers has Mirko Crocop knocked out? Alberto Del Rio, Yuji Nagata.
I don't know. Go look at the New Japan roster. It's from 2002. You'll probably find all of them.
Oh,
Actually, you won't, because it'll be whoever the IWGP champion was the one that didn't get knocked out by Mirko Crocop.
yeah. That was
Oh.
why Tadao Yasuda got the belt because he beat fucking Jerome LeBanner in a shoot fight.
Hey, the second time we referenced Tadao Yasuda on the show.
Yeah, good for him.
Uh, so, so,
Hopefully,
so
hopefully he has some money on us mentioning him again and can pay off his gambling debts.
is he still alive?
As far as I know.
I mean, I guess I don't know if he speaks English or not, but I'm like, we should have him on the show. He's 61 years old, so yes, he's still alive. I I just love the fact that Inoki kept booking MMA fights with his wrestlers days before the Tokyo Dome show. Because it wouldn't just be that
Yeah.
he just do the MMA New Year's Eve show. He would fucking do it with his main event wrestlers, and the booking would be based on how well they did in their shoot fights.
Yeah. I'm trying to. When did
In other news, New Japan
Nakamura?
business went to shit in 2001, 2002.
Yeah, I actually have like a real soft spot for that period of New Japan because that was like the period that I was getting into it, and everybody shits on it, and it's bad, but I love it. Okay, yeah, I was remembering right. And on the New Year's Eve, 2003, Shinsuke Nakamura had a shoot fight against a K1 fighter named Alexei Ignashov, and then 4 days later he wrestled Yoshihiro Takayama in the main event at the Tokyo Dome and got like one of the most violent beatings I've ever seen in a pro wrestling match. And that was the time
Goddamn.
that like he ended up with he had just won the title. Like that was when he had the big upset and won the title from Tenzan. He was 23 years old, and then that was when he ended up having to vacate the title because he got like 2 violent beatings in the span of 4 days.
Oh Lord. And then the next year, the Tokyo Dome show did like 13,000 people, and shockingly, things were not going well for the company at the time.
Yeah,
Um,
it was a rough decade.
so Smoky Mountain Wrestling is apparently being preempted, wherever this is being recorded next week for UK football, and it sent me down a rabbit hole because I'm like, so it's UK football, so is it soccer or is it professional football in the UK? And so I was looking up, like there was an NFL Europe at the time, but they were in the middle of a 2-year hiatus. And so like, well, maybe it's soccer, but also the show airs at 11:35 p.m. Central Time, meaning it's 6:35 a.m. in Europe, meaning the fucking game isn't live. So why are we postponing our wrestling for UK football or soccer or whatever the hell's being aired at 11:35 p.m.?
Arya, honey, sweetheart.
Yes,
University
dear.
of Kentucky football. She's speechless.
I can't fucking believe I didn't think that. I was seriously like, it
See,
has to be European
you
football.
were when you were telling the story, and I started laughing as soon as you started because I knew where it was going. But I thought for sure in the end you were going to be like, and then I figured it out and felt like a dumbass.
Nope. Did not figure that one out. Oh, Lord. Let it be known that the non-sports fan figured that one out.
You're welcome.
Wow. While I'm scraping the egg off my face, let's go to Tracy Smothers with a promo that I did not list an end time, so he may be going for 30 minutes. Who knows? Let's go to Tracy.
Tomorrow afternoon, Johnson City's Freedom Hall. Tracy, it's you and Sensational Sherry in one corner. And in the other corner, it's Miss Tammy Fytch and Primetime Brian Lee.
Tammy Fytch with a capital B. But don't forget, Les, later on in this hour, I got a coal miner's glove match with pretty boy prima donna Brian Lee. Primetime Brian. He got so many nicknames, I don't know what to call him, with Tammy Fytch in his corner. If I get my chance, I'm going to scale that dead-gum pole like Tarzan of the Apes. And Brian, I'm going to knock you into the next area code because you're a nothing happening, bleach blonde, horse-headed punk. But tomorrow afternoon in Johnson City, the Parade of Champions. This is for the title, for the Smoky Mountain Heavyweight Champion. Johnson City is where Brian turned on me. That's where he took the title with Tammy Fytch's help. That's where the dirty white trash, is what I like to call him, interfered, hurt my leg, hurt the medial collateral ligament. It's still holding up. It's pretty sore, but I'm hanging in there fighting. But that's my big chance. Tomorrow, Brian Lee, I'm looking at you right here. By the good grace of God and the support of the fans and just a little bit of lady luck, I'm going to knock you out with that coal miner's glove. And tomorrow in Johnson City, I'm going to be the next Smoky Mountain Heavyweight Champion. And Sensational Sherry is going to bust you up, Tammy Fytch, because you're a nothing happening little Tin Lizzy Huzzy tramp.
Tracy, good luck to you tomorrow in Johnson City. We're going to the ring right now for Beat the Champ.
All right. So Tracy, like maybe just me, but I think his promos have not been very good lately. And I think he's been tripping over his words quite a bit, especially. And I thought he was
It was,
doing that here too. And, hey, he can make tripping over his words sound good, unlike good old Tim Horner. But still.
probably still feeling the effects of being elbowed in the face by Mitsuharu Misawa.
Yeah, I thought that was just because his knee hurt. So, his knee was messing up with his brain while talking about prima donna Brian Lee and Tammy Fytch with a capital B. I like the way he was saying it to Les Thatcher, like Les Thatcher had never heard these things before. And he's like looking at Les like, Les, it's prima donna Brian Lee and Tammy Fytch with a capital B. Like, what don't you get?
It sure is, buddy. It sure is.
So yeah, he's gonna win the title tomorrow night in Johnson City, and I'm still trying to sit here and figure out who the hell he is in a program with next, because like who the hell's the next top heel after Primetime Brian Lee and White Boy? Like I think I know who he wrestles next, but I'm not sure for a fact.
Yeah, let's see. It's October. Yeah, I don't know. I know he's going to back to Japan for the tag league in November, December. I wonder if they're going to do another injury angle.
Probably because I mean Oli's kid is coming in at some point, and I think he feuds with Tracy, I think.
Oh,
And I think that might be what happens.
was it the kid that was on the Dark Side of the Ring episode that kept calling it Georgia Championship?
I don't remember if that was him or not. I know the guy that I thought was Ole Anderson on the Dark Side of the Ring was Bob
Was
Roop.
was Bob Roop?
So
How did Bob Roop age exactly into Ole Anderson? That's crazy.
I was like, I love Bob Roop in Mid South. It's like I think he's criminally underrated. Like when you hear a lot of
Yeah,
people talk about Bob Roop, they're not big fans, but I loved him. I thought he
yeah,
was great. But yeah, he facially looks like Ole Anderson nowadays.
yeah.
Poor Bob.
I thought Bob Roop was pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. So the next match, and I'll be honest, I'm not going to say the less said about this, the better because the match was bad or anything. It's Dirty White Boy defending the Beat the Champ TV title against Chris Kanyon, who's announced from Buffalo, New York. And the reason why I don't want to say much about this is because I watched this Sunday afternoon. I wrote this 5 hours before the AFC title game. Let's hope the Bills do better than Kanyon. Well, Dirty White Boy won with the Buck Snort Blaster.
Yeah. So Canyon, he's young. He's only like a year into the business, but he sold like a motherfucker. Like you see him here, and you think that this guy could do something, but then he actually does. Unlike all the job guys on here who I've said that about who never did anything.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Canyon was
Like
awesome and had like a all time great interest theme in WCW.
oh, definitely. Up until now, like of all the heels we've had, like the best, or I mean, yeah, best career, but the most pushed career was probably Barry Horowitz.
Has Barry Horowitz been on Smoky Mountain?
He was here for like one taping. There was
Oh.
like the one of the earliest angles of Smoky Mountain was that Dutch Mantel had essentially a bodyguard, but it was because he was feuding off and on with Primetime Brian Lee, so he had a jobber bodyguard to just take all the beatings for him. And for like the first 9 or 10 episodes, it was a guy by the name of Carl Stiles. And
Hmm.
then Stiles didn't show up one week, so they told the story that he was in prison or something. And so Barry Horowitz came in for one taping, and then Carl Stiles came back for like one episode and then was never seen again. And Cornette, I wish I remember what video it was, but Cornette made reference to Carl Stiles being a bit of a tool, but didn't tell the story because he was saving it for the Smoky Mountain book he was planning on writing and then never wrote it. Um, so unfortunately, we never heard the story of what was so wrong with Carl Stiles. But yeah, Barry Horowitz was in for 3 weeks and then was gone.
God, I wish he would spend his time writing that Smoky Mountain book instead of what he's doing now.
Well, unfortunately, well, fortunately for him, you know, they're making money off the podcast game. And at least that's more of a guaranteed thing, when they're actually getting paid for it than book writing is. Because, spoiler alert, writing books isn't the most financially rewarding thing. By the way, buy my book.
I already
I
did.
say this I say this the day before my check is coming in. Um, let's after White Boy wins or retains the title, let's go to Les, who's with Dirty White Boy.
Dirty White Boy, and of course, you've just now 3 weeks. You won it from Robert Gibson 2 weeks ago. This is your third defense, and now there's a lot of things going on in your life. I don't know how you concentrate when you're in that ring.
That's right. There's a lot of things going on, and what's really going on that's bothering me the most is I want my manager back. Now this blame little hussy that's running around here, she's screwing with Ron Wright's mind. I don't know if she's giving him the right kind of pills. I don't know if she's really taking care of him or what. But the bottom line is, I want my manager back. Plain and simple. And I'm getting sick and tired of Primetime Brian Lee's fat mouth. And I'm also getting sick and tired of Tracy Smothers. What I want is I want my manager back, and I want my manager's $20,000 back. And if anybody on the face of God's green earth is going to put Tracy Smothers out of action, it's me that you can deal with.
The dirty white boy, and he certainly is one angry man. We'll be back with more action right after this.
I will say this. This is a perfect angle here. That, like, white boy is this awful, horrible person, but first and foremost, he wants a lot of things. But first and foremost, he doesn't want the $20,000 right away. He doesn't want the title right away. He just wants his manager, his friend, his mentor back. And, like, that's the most babyface thing in the world. And but at the same time, they're like teasing you that he's not really going babyface, because at the end he's like, if anybody's going to take out Tracy Smothers, it's going to be me. But you could argue it that say he's not taking out Tracy Smothers because, he's a dickhead heel. He's taking out Tracy Smothers because he wants that $20,000 for his friend, his mentor, Mr. Ron Wright.
Yeah. Right before between the Kanyon match and the interview, they replayed the whole minute and 10-second Dark Secret Dirty White Boy match from last week, and I laughed all over again. Shut up, horsehead.
I noted that this is it's become my new favorite thing, where everyone's making fun of Primetime Brian Lee's head. Tracy's calling him horsehead. Dirty White Boy says he's sick of his fat mouth. And I just love it because, hey, Primetime Brian Lee is a big head,
He does. Yeah. Shut up, horsehead.
But yeah, I'm loving this program, and you can see why I'm loving this program. And, like, the greatest moment in Smoky Mountain history is coming up. I promise.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm starting to guess what it might be. I think I looked at the Observer trying to figure out the where this taping was, and I kind of saw what's coming. Which it's what I do was coming anyway.
Yeah. That's coming up in a few weeks. So we're saying too many things is the greatest thing in Smoky Mountain history. Up next is one of the greatest things in Smoky Mountain history. The first of, I think, 3 that they're doing of this. Tammy's Tips. That's tips with a P. And it's a blatant ripoff of Andy Kaufman. Just flat out blatant ripoff. And hey, for a blatant ripoff of Andy Kaufman, it's a pretty damn good one. Let's go to Tammy Fytch with Tammy's Tips.
Hi, this is Tammy Fytch, and I'm here with Tammy's Tips. I know many of you in the Smoky Mountain area are underprivileged. You don't know what it's like to live in the big city. You haven't had the advantages that I have had. You're poor. So I wanted to do something to help you, because I, like Hillary Clinton, strongly believe in charity work. Many of you have come to me and said, Tammy, you're so beautiful. How can we be as beautiful as you are? Well, I can't work miracles, but I can give you the benefit of my knowledge of makeup, exercise, hair, skin, and nail care, and social graces. In weeks to come, I plan on taking a typical average woman of this area and transform her into an acceptable human being. Now, let's go to this week's installment of Tammy's Tips. Hi, and here we are concentrating on nail and skin care today. And here I have a typical average woman from this area. And what is your name?
Margie.
And how old are you?
29.
And where are you from?
Northern Virginia.
Well, that's certainly from this area. And how long have you been like this? Never mind. Let's start with nails. Ooh, why are you wearing black nail polish? Ooh, that's not black nail polish. What is that? What is that from?
At work.
What do you do?
I weigh coal and garbage.
You weigh garbage? Why would anyone want to weigh garbage?
It's a state law. They have to know exactly what's going up there to the landfill. And I don't know. I just work there.
Okay, let's skip the nails from now. Let's talk about skincare. First, take off those leather gloves. Oh, they're not gloves. What type of soap do you use?
I use my mother's lye soap.
Your what? Oh, okay. Never mind. Let's go into something else. This is deodorant. See, ladies? Deodorant. That's how it's pronounced. What this is for, you use it on certain areas of your body, and it helps you to keep from perspiring. Would you like to try to use it? Let's see what you can do. Oh. Okay, we'll need more work on that. We'll work on that later. This is perfume. What perfume does, ladies, you can follow along too if you have this at home. What this does is help you keep sweet smelling and ladylike. Do you want to try this? Okay, have you ever seen this before?
No.
No? Okay, we'll try. If we need more practice, we'll practice later and see what you can do. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Ladies, these items are available in stores, but I don't think you'd use food stamps to get them. Oh, join us next week for another installment of Tammy's Tips.
All right. You know, a segment is amazing when the person involved pops and breaks character during it because of something that's just so fucking preposterously great. And that's what happened here because Margie, and obviously, if you don't see this, you don't know it, but Margie, when she gets handed the perfume, sprays her back with it, and Tammy just pops, and she had to cover her face from laughing because it was just hilarious. And yes, I e- like obviously if this happened today, it'd be scripted down to the letter. There was no fucking scripting here. I guarantee it was okay. Tammy, explain all these things. Margie, you react and go from there. And it was improv. It's yes and you know, except that
Yeah.
Margie said she'd never heard of perfume. Um,
I'm kind of obsessed with Margie. Look, oh, Margie's amazing. Look, it was like I knew this woman, okay? Because I have known so many women exactly like this. She's um she says she's 29. She looks 45. She has short, curly brown hair, uh, a little uh, chunky, not facially, maybe not conventionally attractive. Now, I'm sure she's a great person and a lot of fun, but you just have to understand the visual here. You have
is
Tammy Fytch, you have 21-year-old Tammy Fytch next to this woman, and
like
uh, the fucking accent and the black fingernails and that she weighs garbage. Why do you weigh garbage? Well, they got to know how much garbage is going into the landfill. And then, like,
I
uh,
I was seriously like, is that a real job?
yes, that is a real, yeah. Um,
I I
you
I
do,
legitimately did
you have
not
to
know that
weigh.
was a
You never been to a landfill before? You gotta
no.
weigh going. You gotta weigh your vehicle going in and out, so they know how much shit's going in there. But and you said she sprayed her back. It looked to me like she aimed for under her arm and just missed.
Like
So Arya,
when she sprayed the deodorant, she missed entirely. It went
yes,
behind
she
her.
did. Yes, Arya, I have an
Uh,
important question.
am I
Did
gonna
did you
clip
learn?
this and put it up on YouTube?
Yeah, did you learn anything from Tammy's tips?
I know that if I ever meet Tammy Fitch again, to not wear my gloves when I'm meeting her.
Well, I can't imagine you're going to go to visitation at the prison. So
I actually met her at a WrestleCon, obviously before she got arrested this time. Um, and actually, because I used to work in hotel reservations, and I would talk to, not like big name wrestlers or big name celebrities, but I talked to some celebrities and wrestlers, and I think I talked to Les Thatcher at one point, but Sonny I talked to. Do you ever watch Survivor?
My mom did, so I'm aware of it.
Okay. Okay, there was a character named, or a person named Philip about 10, 12 years ago, and was just this crazy ass motherfucker. He called one day to make a hotel reservation. Like, from his voice, this is Philip Shepard from Survivor. Like, without him actually saying that, like, holy shit, it's Philip. Um, but oh yeah, the greatest was, and we'll get back to this in a second. The greatest was the day before the Academy Awards. So keep this in mind. It's the fucking day before the Academy Awards. I get a call from Spike Lee's people. Not Spike Lee, but his people. And the reason why I know it was Spike Lee's people was because that's all they could keep telling me was, yeah, we're Spike Lee's people. I'm like, okay, great. They wanted a hotel room the next day in Los Angeles. Like, I went in, like, I think it was a 50-mile radius. There were no hotels within a 50-mile radius of Los Angeles. And of course, they are like, well, don't you know who Spike Lee is? I'm like, I understand who Spike Lee is. I'm sorry, but we're booked up because of the Academy Awards. There's like 20 or 30 hotels that are chain owned in that area. And of course, there's no fucking rooms the day before the fucking Academy Awards. And of course, it's my fault that they waited till that late to book and all that shit. But yeah, Spike Lee could be a wonderful person. I don't know. I've never talked to Spike Lee, but his people were dicks.
I doubt Spike Lee's a wonderful person.
Yeah. I also talked to Bruno's son, not David Sammartino, but his other son, because he called before WrestleMania in New Jersey to book a hotel room because they were all going in for the Hall of Fame. And I remember
Oh,
talking to him about wrestling. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be there too, and I'm looking forward to seeing your dad. Yada yada yada. And that was really cool.
Bruno was so awesome. I look like when he used to do the shows with Dave. Just said Bruno was like the fucking greatest man ever. Love Bruno.
Yep. Like Paul Bearer, like he was another great guest too. And
Oh,
I remember around the time that he died, Brian posted on Twitter something. He's like, what former guest should we try to get on again? I'm like, oh, it's been a while since you had Paul Bearer on, and like I swear, like 2 weeks later was when he died.
oh, that sucks. Yeah,
Yeah.
love. I was. I think it was one of the ROH straight shooting serials that he did with Cornette.
Mhm.
I just thought it was. I thought it was such a crazy story, and it's unfortunate that the footage doesn't exist because the VCRs didn't exist yet. When so he wrestled a little bit, and then he got out of the business, and then went and did the funeral thing, and then ended up getting back in the business. But like when he was like first started wrestling, he was a job guy on Memphis TV.
Nice. Nice.
At least once. I think it may have only been once, but it's just shit like that. Like I wish there was footage of.
I I wish there was footage of something that sadly happened before cell phones. Kane told this story. I think it was during Paul Bearer's Hall of Fame speech, where when Kane was still the burned brother of the Undertaker, son of Paul Bearer, usually it was Paul that drove. But one day Paul was sick and he got Kane to drive. And of course, they get near the arena and Kane has to put on a mask because they're trying to maintain kayfabe. And suddenly they get to the arena and Paul, it's a miracle. Paul wakes up, he rolls in and was like, oh, look, my son Kane, Kane can drive. Yes. And it was,
Excellent. Well,
yes,
I
it,
mean,
it was probably, I was like, go ahead.
Michael Myers could drive. Why not Kane?
Yeah, exactly. Well, like, can you imagine? Like, I know that was pre 9/11. Could you imagine him trying to like go through airports and whatnot while trying to maintain kayfabe as Kane?
Yeah, that's I just can't. But I love the story. Cornette told a story that like way back, like in Crockett, like late '80s. When Bubba was there, and they were doing something, and they were in front of fans when it happened, and Bubba slammed his hand in the fucking car door and did not sell it at all until they got into the building away from the fans, and then was just motherfucker, and Cornette was like how did you not like do anything? He's like, well, there were fans there, I couldn't.
Yeah,
People used to
heard it was a
respect the
door.
business, damn it.
Yeah. Yep, yep, yep. And I'll be honest, like if I didn't respect the business, just training for as little as I did, I really learned to respect how fake and not fake pro wrestling really is. I think I told you
Yeah.
this story, but like we were learning to sell, so there'd be one person in the middle giving either a forearm or a kick, and everybody else would stand in the corners and feed in. And she's like, I'm 5'11" and pounds, and she's like 5 foot even and 110 pounds, give or take. So I'm like, okay, lay in the forearm kind of thing. Like, I'm big, I can take it. Famous last words. I was feeling that fucking forearm for like 3 days. Like if the ropes weren't there, I would have fallen through the ropes and landed on my head. She hit me so hard, and
Ah.
I'm like, I couldn't even complain. Like she gave me what I asked for, and then the trainer Ely was like, "You're not selling well enough," and I was like, "This is the best selling I've ever done in my life."
Ain't gonna
Um,
get no better than that.
yes. So up next, we got saxophone music for some reason while they played highlights of the Steiners and the Heavenly Bodies from SummerSlam. Why saxophone music? I don't know.
This
I,
wasn't
I
this wasn't a WWE Network edit. This was the original.
yeah, yeah. This is the actual music that played on the actual show. Oh well. Um, so let's go to a Heavenly Bodies promo. Um, I don't know if we have a Steiner's promo in here. I don't have it noted, but either way, let's go to a promo that involved Heavenly Bodies and Jim Cornette.
Jim Cornette and the Heavenly Bodies tomorrow in Johnson City. Jim, you've got two key issues happening.
That's exactly right. And let me just say this to the Steiner brothers tomorrow afternoon, Johnson City. You know, Steiner brothers, you're from Detroit, Michigan. You're just like those big, inefficient, gas-guzzling, poorly made American motor cars. You're big and you're bulky and you take up a lot of room. But meanwhile, the Heavenly Bodies are those lean, sleek, aerodynamically designed, fuel-efficient foreign import sports cars that can run all night long on a very little bit of gas. And Steiner brothers, you're going to find out tomorrow in Johnson City who is the greatest tag team, not only in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, not only in the World Wrestling Federation, but all the world of wrestling. These guys have been to Atlanta, they've been to Maine, they've been to Spain, and they've been to all points in between. Any organization, any federation that thinks they got some top talent, we go in, we come, we see, and we conquer. And that's exactly what we're going to do to the Steiner brothers when they come to our backyard in Johnson City, Arnold, Pitbull, dog or no. And I want to say one more thing. The Rock and Roll Express will fall as well because they're wearing those tag team title belts again, but only for a short time before the Heavenly Bodies swoop down on a Rock and Roll Express.
One thing, we've been coming out here every week and showing everybody that we're the #1 team in the nation. We've been proving ourselves week after week. Please give us another shot against the Rock and Roll. We'll bring the titles back. Don't send these guys. We can beat anybody. We'll bring the belts back. Give us one more shot.
Let me say this. Let me say this.
Get the job done.
I trusted you guys. I trusted you guys when you won the belts that you would keep them away from the Rock and Roll Express. You dropped the ball, guys. So what you did was you got a penalty. You got put on probation. I'm sending the A-team in. They're going to show you how it's done. You learn and you observe and you go out and apply yourselves and you listen to me, and then you will once again be at the top, the pinnacle of the world of professional wrestling. But first, you have to learn how it's done. So you guys, just remember this. Right now, you're second string, but one of these days, maybe you're the front line. Come on, guys.
There you've heard it from Team A, Team B, and Jim Cornette. A little dissension? I think so. We'll be right back.
All right, so we have a couple really good angles here on the show, and not just the main event angles. We're getting a good little underneath angle here, and I can't believe we're getting a good underneath angle with the Harrises, but here we are. And of course, like Cornette being, a hypocrite, because yeah, the Harrises lost the belt, but as we mentioned earlier, when Triple H is a 13-time champion, he had to lose the belt 13 times. The Heavenly Bodies are like 4-time champions, which means they had to lose the belts 4 times, and they're not on probation. But
Well, that
yeah,
wasn't this
so
Heavenly Bodies, to be fair.
well, this Heavenly Bodies are 1-time champions at least.
Not yet.
Yeah. Yeah, so I had to laugh that Jim Cornette's promo against the Steiners was basically, yeah, the Steiners are big, but the Heavenly Bodies are small. And Jimmy Del Rey, who is totally our scumbag, is just thrusting out his crotch and his chest and gyrating for several minutes on end. Dr. Tom is fluffing his hair, and it looked like he was waving a girl over who apparently was ignoring him.
It was amazing.
I
Just, oh, I love it so much.
Yeah.
Jimmy Del Rey, he's our scumbag. He's our
Yes.
scumbag.
I love that when Stan Lane was in the Heavenly Bodies, their heat was that they were flying. They had to fly in girls from Florida because the scummy girls here in the Smoky Mountain, they aren't good enough to touch the Heavenly Bodies. Now Jimmy Del Rey, it's like, ladies, the line is to the right. And
Respect.
yes. Um, but yeah, so I can't believe I'm looking forward to an angle with the Harrises. It doesn't seem possible, but it's true. It's happening. Um, and yeah, more on this to come.
A lot of people
So,
turning babyface right now. Somebody got to go the other way.
yeah. And spoiler, alert, we're bringing in more teams too in the very near future.
All right.
Yep. All right. So, let's now go to Bobby Blaze, who I'll be honest, I'm going to wait till after the promo's over, but I'm going to say something that might be controversial about Bobby Blaze when we get done listening to this promo.
U.S. Junior Heavyweight Champion Bobby Blaze. And Bobby, you said you had a few things you wanted to say to the wrestling fans.
Yes, I just want to thank all the great fans of Smoky Mountain Wrestling for getting behind Bobby Blaze, the new U.S. Junior Heavyweight Champion. Showing my gratitude towards the fans, I just want to say thanks, and I hope I can hold up my end of the deal by defending the U.S. Junior Heavyweight title. And Chris Candido, if you're out there listening, you know what? You might be able to beat me someday, but there's something you will never, ever do, and that's throw this belt, the one I take so much pride in a river, because the only way you'll throw this belt in a river is over my dead body.
Bobby, good luck to you, and we sure hope to see that match between you and Candido.
Thank you.
Bobby Blaze, the junior champion, United States Junior Heavyweight Champion. Right now, we're going to the...
All right. So I get that, Bobby Blaze has been wrestling like a couple years at this point. He's not a veteran. He hasn't been around for a decade like, other people have. But I'm going to say something controversial. I think Tim Horner is a better promo than he is.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't see how that's controversial.
It's controversial because Horner has the well-deserved reputation of being a shitty promo, but Bobby Blaze, like, oh boy, like he's not very good. And like I said, he's new. He's new-ish. He hasn't really wrestled for very long or been in a lot of territories where he's gotten a lot of promo time, but like he's getting a lot of promo time on these shows, and it is very, very wooden, very I'm tripping over my wordsy, like, great guy. I've heard him do interviews on different podcasts. He's a really nice guy. I'd love to have him on this one because he has a lot of insight. He wrote two great books out there, Pin Me, Pay Me, and I forget what the other one is, but you can buy those on Amazon. But as a promo, especially in 1993, he's not that great.
He is not. He seems like a nice guy. He's like I said, he's like Tracy. He's got the all shucks thing, but it's a little bit more of a flavor of it. He just comes off as a little bit more pitiful.
It feels a little more contrived than Tracy. Like Tracy feels like he's just the naturally aw shucks kind of guy, and Bobby Blaze feels like he's amping it up a little bit to get there.
The Southerners listening will know what I mean when I say this. I feel like he heard a lot of "Bless Your Heart" growing up.
I understand that, and I'm from the North. Oh Lord. So we're 35 minutes into a 50-minute show, and typically at this point, we have another quick little 2 or 3 minute match to get somebody else over, and then we go to our main event, usually with about 6 or 7 minutes left, and they go from there. Well, not this week, we went to the main event with almost 15 minutes of TV time left. And of course, it was Smoky Mountain champion Primetime Brian Lee with Tammy Fytch with a capital B and Mr. Ron Wright versus Tracy Smothers in a coal miner's glove match. They gave these guys a lot of time. Um, and it ended up using like 10 minutes. So it's not like a lot of time in the grand scheme of things. But I mean, it's a long time for a 50-minute TV show.
Yeah,
Um,
the match only went 6.5 minutes, but the whole rest of the show is this story.
yeah. Okay. Um, so I'll be honest, I was shocked that that poll is as strong as it is because I think we've talked about this in the past that Smoky Mountain has this pole. It is a very skinny pole. It looks like if you try to climb it, it's going to bend over and break. I know, like I would not climb this pole, and I thought like I figured, okay, Tracy's not going to climb it. Like Primetime Brian Lee's going to like stand, and he's so tall, he's going to just stand, reach up, and grab it. No, that's not what happens here because they both tried to climb. Like, and then the finish, Tammy gets up on the apron. Those two collide mid-ring. Tammy gets up on the apron to distract the referee in this no disqualification match. Dirty White Boy runs down, climbs the pole, and grabs the glove. And so that thing is a lot stronger than I thought it was. White Boy jumps off the top rope, and this is where, you know, conjecture comes in, whether what you think happened here. Tracy's in front of Primetime Brian Lee. He ducks, White Boy hits Primetime Brian Lee with the loaded glove. Now you can argue that Primetime Brian Lee, or I'm sorry, that Dirty White Boy had enough time. He could have stopped if he wanted to. You could make that argument. You could argue that he jumped so far that it would not have mattered if Tracy ducked or not because he was going to hit Primetime Brian Lee. Or you could claim, hey, it was an honest accident. Shit happens. It's pro wrestling. This happens all the time. Either way, Primetime Brian Lee gets knocked the fuck out, and Tracy gets the win over the Smoky Mountain champion.
This
Um,
angle is so good.
so I'm going to give it some very faint praise here. This was better than Sting versus Jake Roberts. I
I
I
I
always have,
I liked the
I
Sting and Jake match. I know
so
Dave like
you're the one.
Dave shit. Well, we just reviewed it. We reviewed Halloween Havoc '92 as a bonus show in the Oh My God cast right around Halloween. And like, okay, I get it that it's not a Dave match, but if you're somebody that you like psychology, you like a good basic match with simple psychology, that match isn't bad at all.
Admittedly, I haven't watched it in a while, but I just remember that was the show with the three final matches were Rick Rude versus Masachono, Ron Simmons versus the Barbarian, and this Sting versus Jake Roberts match in a coal miner's glove. And I think part of what did not help it was that it was a spin the wheel, make the deal gimmick where they'd spin the wheel, you have 12 options, and coal miner's glove was one of the weakest options. Because like they had like barbed wire match and cage match and like all these other matches that sound brutal and bloody and violent and sounded like the perfect type of match for this feud. Because remember, the feud was around Jake Roberts costing Sting because Sting was supposed to get a world title match with Vader the night Ron Simmons won it, and Jake Roberts appeared, dropped Sting with a DDT, and cost him his world title shot. And so, like, okay, it made more sense for them to have this brutal, bloody feud match, and instead they had a match where essentially the first person to punch the other one was going to win.
Yeah, I didn't know any of the context. I just like the match.
Yeah. I guess we'll see because I'm going to be rewatching it soon enough. We'll see how it, well, I don't say holds up, but we'll see how it is.
Well,
Um,
there's a Barry Windham and Dustin Rhodes against Steve Austin and Steve Williams. That was the day Gordy quit. Gordy quit like
yep,
that day. So they had
yep.
that might be like one of the best tag team matches ever on a U.S. pay-per-view.
Which is funny because like, there's two Steve Williamses is,
Yeah, I know.
part of
Yeah,
the problem was like it was not a bait and switch because like what are they going to do? But it was just that it was a replacement. And if I remember right, the crowd wasn't that into it, but for some reason I remember the crowd not being into much on that show. But again, I'll have to go back and watch it. But I just remember Rude Chono especially was, atrocious, which was hilarious because the NWA title, and we've discussed this, the NWA title in that 92, 93 run, like it was so fucking weird because New Japan had two match of the year candidates for the NWA title. Masa Chono versus Rick Rude in the finals of the G1 and Masa Chono versus Great Muta at the Tokyo Dome. Both of those matches were rematched on US pay-per-view, and both times the US pay-per-view match in one case may not have blown chunks, but the quality was just so obscenely much lower than the Japanese version. It wasn't even funny.
Yeah, I watched the G1 final right before I watched Halloween Havoc just to have a comparison, and oh my God, I have never seen we went from a 4.5-star match to I don't know. I thought it was bad. The G1 final 4.5. I thought. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
and then
this match,
and then Halloween Havoc was -4.5.
Really? I didn't think it was that bad. I gave it a 1.5 stars. It's a bad match. It's not. I've seen so much more horrible shit than this. But Dave acted like this match fucked his wife or something.
I mean,
I've never
honestly,
seen him eviscerate a match like that Rude Rude Chono match.
the funny thing is, you go back and people talk about Dave being biased towards, well, now it's about AEW, but biased about Japanese pro wrestling, especially the last decade in comparison to American wrestling. You go back to that 90s. Not like there was a lot of great American wrestling going on at the time, but if you ever want to make a case for Dave being biased towards Japanese wrestling, go back and reread the 90s Observers. Especially about All Japan Women too. He loved that. And it was just, if Twitter existed back then, Dave would have, been ripped apart for that too.
Okay, as I go through 1993, I have been watching weekly All Japan TV. I have been watching the major All Japan women's shows, and a little bit of New Japan. I don't have as much New Japan from that year, but Dave was right. Japanese wrestling was so much better than what's going on in the U.S. at the time.
Yeah. So you're telling me that Doink versus Bam Bam Bigelow is not, your cup of tea?
I mean, I don't know. It's fun. When I watch that stuff, it's weird because if that stuff was happening now, I would hate it. But then, watching it when it was 30 years ago, it's just fun to watch.
Plus, it's in its context. If they had Doink versus Bam Bam Bigelow or the equivalent of that happening nowadays, it would be so fucking out of place. It's what the hell is this and why is it on my TV? That, for lack of a better word, that was 1993 WWF.
Yeah, I appreciate that stuff more now than I did when I was young. Maybe, I don't know, maybe in 20 years I'll like fucking the shits on TV now. I doubt it.
Hey, 1994 WWF I loved when I was 10 years old, and 1994 WWF I loved a few years ago when I went and rewatched everything. So
well, I'll be there in about 3 months.
I'm looking forward to that. Hear what you think. So anyway, so White Boy accidentally punches Primetime Brian Lee. Let's go now to a show closing promo where all four of them are hanging out with Les Thatcher.
What, are you stupid? I had him beat. Tammy, you see, this is what happens. You had him beat? Yes, I hadn't climbed that pole and got the glove and tried to do something, it sure didn't look like he was going to do too much laying flat on your stinking back. Laying on my back? I'll show you ought to be laying on the back. Huh? What do you mean, calm down?
Listen, Dirty White Boy, down deep, they've really got us in their best interest. Now, you're going to have to just calm down and see how this thing's worked out. They're working for us, and I think you just don't realize that you've not got it through your head. And I'm even thinking about adopting Tammy to get everything worked out.
You seen out old fool? What the hell you think you're talking about?
White boy, white boy.
I'm a heart attack down here. Now, you need to calm down. You can't talk to me like that. And let's work this thing out. They're going to try to help us.
Hey, white boy, You know what that means? If Ronnie's thinking of adopting me and you consider him a father figure, that makes me your sister.
All right now, all right.
Well, I mean, you's gonna have to talk when you get away from Miss Huzzy.
Where's this gonna leave you?
I ain't got nothing to say to you. Get out of my face.
There you have it. A lot of dissension in that camp, no doubt about it. We want.
All right. If this is the second time on the show that Tammy popped me. I was not expecting either Ron Wright to say that I'm going to adopt her or Tammy to say, that makes me your sister. Like, if she was a man, Dirty White Boy would have punched her. Like,
Yes.
is that
Oh.
great of a fucking line there?
By the way, it's funny. So like right before this, the local promos.
Yes, I
it was
forgot
like,
to say that part.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was Brian and Tammy were doing a promo, and the Dirty White Boy comes in, and they start yelling at each other. And then we cut from Dirty White Boy and Brian Lee yelling at each other to Dirty White Boy and Brian Lee yelling at each other. By the way,
Yes.
Brian Lee looks a little bit trashier every week that he's with Tammy. Like, he's got the 5 o'clock shadow. His hair is a little greasier. Fantastic.
And this is a year before the Underfaker. So, but he's starting to grow in the beard, like almost as if there was a long-term plan, which, I mean, maybe there was, but it wasn't involving him, I imagine. Plus, if it was, he wouldn't have to grow in his beard right now. I imagine it would grow a little faster than this. But yeah, so Primetime Brian Lee, I like that, like, he's trying something to look different because, like, he's a little too clean cut to be a heel at this point.
Yeah, but every week he looks a little bit scuzzier.
Honestly, like, the worst or best, however you want to look at it, was last year after Kevin Sullivan murdered him to death. They did promos from his bedroom, and like he's in a 4-poster bed underneath a quilt cutting promos. Like, oh my God, that was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, he needed Jimmy Del Rey there playing with stuffed animals.
Yes, sadly, Jimmy Del Rey was somewhere in Florida at that point.
Unfortunate.
But yeah, so it all ends and everyone goes their separate ways. And that does it for this week's show. Next week is a special episode. It is highlights of whatever the hell the name of the series is, Parade of Champions this weekend, which I'm going to argue is a bigger violation of kayfabe than anything Kenny Omega has ever done. And we'll talk about that next.
The Parade of Champions is a bigger violation of
airing what they did is a bigger violation of kayfabe than anything, and has maybe not violation of kayfabe, has exposed wrestling more than anything Kenny Omega has ever done.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah. Looking forward to that here. So before we go, what we like to do is tell you what else is happening in the world of wrestling, because I can tell you October or whatever day this is, October 9th, 1993, until I'm blue in the face, but telling you what else is happening gives you some context. So you go, oh, hey, I remember that. That's what was happening. And to be honest, this is one of those times where it's like you only know what's happening if you're a hardcore mark, because it's not a huge newsworthy week this week. So the UWFI, which was basically a worked version of Pancrease, had their first show, their first pay-per-view, titled UWFI Shoot Fighting, It's Real. And despite the fact that A, it was pro wrestling, and B, there were 0 U.S. national TV deals promoting the show did approximately 100,000 pay-per-view buys, which is slightly more than WCW's Fall Brawl, which did 95,000. Now, there is the source of some conjecture, as some are reporting that it did 1/4 of the number of Fall Brawl, and others were reporting that the phone lines to call in and order the pay-per-view, and that's really dating us here, having to call in to order, but the phone lines to call in and order were so backed up that they had to order the replay because they couldn't call and order the first version.
I just watched that show about a week ago.
Yes, as part of the real shoot fighting on the show was a tag team match. And, the number of real fights that have a tag team match in it are just
It's been
too
done.
numerous to count. Yeah, but like
Yeah,
if it's but it's too gimmicky for your first show when you're bragging about how real it is. Like your first show, like if you're gonna really say, "Oh, this is real," you got to do all one-on-one matches because tag team
yeah.
just comes off as gimmicky.
Yeah, look,
Hulk. Ho-
I'm sorry, watch UWFI and then watch that Pancrease show. Like UWFI is very obviously pro wrestling. It's
yeah.
and here's I've watched like a fair amount of shoot style lately, which is something I've never really delved into. And it's like, especially the ring stuff around this time. The UWFI is a little bit more my taste than rings because it's more traditional pro wrestling. But largely on the whole, now really good shoot style is awesome. Bad shoot style is fucking insufferable. It's like lucha. Like there's nothing worse. Like there's nothing worse than bad lucha. Bad shoot style is just. But it's just overall to me, it's long periods of this is kind of boring, and then flashes of this is the coolest shit I've ever seen.
Maybe we should get you to watch the first UFC show in a month
I
when
will.
that comes up.
Yeah, I plan to actually.
Oh, great. Have you ever seen it before?
No, I've seen.
Okay.
I for some reason, like when I was a kid, I rented UFC 5, and that was the one
Nice.
that Dan Severn won the tournament, and they had the worst MMA fight in history between Ken Shamrock and Hoist
Uh,
Gracie, where they
uh,
cuddled for 36 minutes.
until 2 years later when they did the second Ken Shamrock Dan Severn fight. And
Oh, I
that was
never
the
even
new
saw that
worst
one.
fight in this.
Oh,
Oh, that was even worse. Um, if you ever want to, if you're ever having trouble falling asleep, pull up the second Ken Shamrock Dan Severn fight.
all right.
And the story behind that actually is what helps make it so bad. But that we'll save that for another day. By the way, UFC one, it's so like you watch it and you're like, okay, this is UFC. This is the company that is still exists now. This is not UFC. Like, that kind of
No.
like this is what it is, but it's not. Um, and oh, Bill Superfoot Wallace is the uh play-by-play guy, and he just take a drink every time he fucks up. Like the show's 90 minutes long, you may not make it to 90 minutes before losing your liver.
By the way,
Also, mhm.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting. The most interesting thing about that pay per view, I guess, is the whole story that that actual card in Japan, the main event was Naoki Sano against Super Vader, and that match did not air on the U.S. pay per view because Vader was under contract to WCW.
Yep. It's a similar reason why WCW couldn't air the Steiner Brothers match a few months earlier from the Japanese pay-per-view
Yeah,
because they were under contract to the WWF, so they couldn't do it. Hulk Hogan's new movie, Mr. Nanny, escaped this week, grossing $1.9 million for the weekend, finishing in 12th place. He also made the media rounds, and actually tried to plug New Japan while on the Tonight Show. But Jay Leno mocked the idea of Japanese pro wrestling, first thinking it was sumo wrestling, and then thinking like it's Japanese guys, so they're all 5 foot nothing. And eventually Hogan just threw in the towel on that one. Um,
fuck Jay
at the
Leno.
WCW, yeah, at the WCW tapings this weekend, they were having fun turning people back and forth because Sid Vicious turned, Brian Pillman turned, Max Payne turned, Eric Watts turned and then turned back. Ron Simmons, who I thought was gone, turned, and so did Paul Roma. So you
I'm
have that
not
to look forward
fucking.
to.
I'm not fucking cheering for Max Payne or Paul Roma.
Uh, Well, Max Payne has a pretty fun little tag team with Cactus Jack coming up. So there's
Oh
that
yeah,
bonus.
yeah, that's right. I saw some of the Nasty Boys matches. I've been watching I've been watching since like February or March. It's now October. God, Max Payne sucked.
I think you've made it through the worst of it because, I mean, like,
Yeah.
yeah, say what you want about Hogan coming in with all of the Hogan people, but they're at least spending money on talent next year and not, fucking the Cole twins and Thunder and Light. Oh, actually, Thunder and Lightning are still coming in, I think. But like, you know what I mean? Like they're
The
at
awesome
least
the
not bringing.
colossal Kongs.
Yeah, they're uh, not just bringing in the greenest guys they could find. Um, but anyway, the last bit of news really isn't really news, but hey, we're gonna call it news because hey, it's my fucking show. Noted fan and photographer Jeff Cohen is starting his Championship Wrestling of America promotion in Indianapolis in the next few weeks. The reason why I mention this is because one of the fans who would sit in the crowd every week for his shows is Randy Bear, who would better known as R.D.
Oh,
Reynolds of WrestleCrap fame.
shout
And
out to Deal.
yep, this promotion is actually his in because he becomes a color commentator at one point.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So yeah. But yeah, that's kind of pretty much do it here for our show this week. We've made it to the end of another week, Trey. We made it to the end of another week.
Huzzah! That's a relief. Just
Yeah.
they're still going to keep making them. Just there's going to be another week next week, and after that, yeah, they just never stop.
So Royal Rumble Saturday. Any predictions on who's going to win?
Uh,
I think,
uh,
and this is me just going on a limb just to be proven wrong, I guess. But I think Jordan Grace wins the Women's Rumble because it's like
very well
I know
could.
that they try to make the women's matches more important nowadays, but it's still at the end of the day, it's still the women's match. It's still one of those things where anybody can win and no one really bats an eye at it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I've walked back on my Jey Uso wins the world title at WrestleMania prediction as much as I'd like for it to be true and happen. But since I don't think that's happening, I think CM Punk wins.
I also think that CM Punk wins.
Yeah, because like it's probably either him or Cena, and it seems more obvious that Cena's going to win the Elimination Chamber.
Yeah, it's yeah, and that show starts at 5 p.m. my time, I think. So I guess I'm gonna watch that live instead of Collision. Here's the thing: when there are two shows that I want to watch that are on at the same time, but one of them starts first, I'll watch the one that starts first live.
I guess you could fast forward through the commercials and Royal Rumble. I was gonna say, but at least with Collision, you could fast forward through the commercials. But yeah, it's Peacock, baby, so it can you're gonna have 40 minutes of commercials in there too. But anyway, that's gonna do it for this week's show. Check out the Oh My
Hey,
God cast. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna plug the Oh My God cast. We begin our coverage of NWA. Is it Bloodfest or is it Blood Feast? OhMyGodcast.com.
I still say Blood Feast is a much better name.
Yeah.
But that's going to do it for this week's show. Thank you all for listening. Hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you again in 7 days.
Bye.